At 911, we're pretty much the people who are behind the scenes. You're never going to see us in person. You're going to see Captain Pixley and his team. You're going to see Jeanette and her team, obviously, and then the Denver Health paramedics out on the street. So we answer all the phone calls for Denver 911, and then Denver Police Non-Emergency, which is a number that we'll get to later, but it's 720-913-2000. Our primary communications center, we just moved in May of last year, is over at 45th and Peoria, and then our backup center is right there at 9th and Josephine. Is more of our remote communications operations center. And then we share that building with one of the units within Denver Police Department. So got a brand new, for us, shiny new building, a lot more square footage, and yeah, just a room to grow, because I mean, we process over 1 million calls per year for service. Maybe not this year with COVID actually slowing things down for us a little bit, but certain situations with the riots and the protests have caused fluctuations in our call volume. So we are the primary safety answering point, or the public safety answering point for Denver 911, which means that we're the primary 911 answering service for the city and county in Denver. You'll see there that we work within the Department of Safety. We have about 170 Department of Safety employees, and then we break it down from emergency communications technicians, which are the people that answer the 911 calls and the non-emergency calls. And then we have police dispatchers. So on our side of the room, we have the people who take the 911 calls, that process them, that create them, and then the police dispatchers communicate that information out to the police officers that are on the street. And then within our building, we also house about 24 Denver firefighter dispatchers, and then about 26 Denver Health Medical Center paramedics. So we create the calls, and then they dispatch their own ambulances, apparatuses for the Denver Fire Department. And then right there, you'll see in the middle, over 1 million calls for service between all three agencies. So we're busy. We're busy throughout the year. Whenever we do these presentations, I like to mention this because there's various ways that you can reach 911. Primarily, you can reach 911 right there on the left-hand side of calling from your cell phone. So you are able to press 911 on your cell phone. As soon as you hit call, then it hits off a cell phone tower and then comes to us. And then in the middle there is pretty much a landline where we can see your name and where you're calling from. A lot of people think that with cell phones, we can track where you are. We know exactly where you are. With technology pretty much getting better each day, we have a better understanding of where you are. But the best way to reach us and know exactly where you are is through calling from a landline, because we can see who's calling and we can see where you're calling from. And then the right-hand side is a voice over internet protocol. So whether you're able to call from Zoom or WhatsApp or any of those online services, you're actually able to dial 911. And it's just through the internet is pretty much as simple as I'll keep it. So you can also call through your car. Sometimes if you have that service in your car, whether you're able to reach 911 through there. And after you've been in an accident, that's another way to call 911. So 911's only been around for about 60 years. And so we're still catching up. We're introducing new various services to the city and county of Denver citizens. So pretty much those are the three primary ways that you're going to reach 911. And then also you can text us, which is obviously with the cell phone, but you can text 911, which I'll get to here at the end. And then I just threw in these little statistics for Denver 911 for our total calls per hour. Our busiest hour is usually the commute home, especially during the week. You'll see I put 1,700, which means 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Just in military time there. And then these stats are from, gosh, I want to say I updated these in March before COVID really hit, and then we started, not really doing public outreach group presentations in person. So this is these are old numbers, and I haven't updated these because I haven't used these in a while, but you'll see our least busiest hour there, 4 o'clock in the morning, total call volume. I pulled those from last year. Average call duration, obviously 3 minutes, and then our busiest day is Friday and least busiest day Tuesday. So just some kind of cool stats. As you can see, sometimes we unfortunately go on hold whenever big events happen, big accidents happen. Somebody fires a gun outside in a pretty dense neighborhood. A lot of people call, and so if you ever reach us and we're on hold, please stay on hold until we answer the phone call. But unfortunately, we do go on hold. We don't like to, but it does happen, and some things happen, and we can't ever fill enough seats in our center to be able to take the influx of calls throughout these high priority incidents. And then you'll see here, this is just more of a geographical area and where we cover. So, within the Denver Fire Department, within the Denver Police Department, and, they are able to stay within their kind of area. But we answer phone calls for the entire city. So from 52nd to Sheridan, all the way down to Bellevue, and then Piccadilly on the east side. DIA is different from us. We just handle just the city of Denver. DIA is still the city of Denver technically, but if you're on Pena or at DIA, and they have their own call center out there, so it's just we have to transfer calls to them, and they transfer calls to us. Mutual aid, we accept the calls for service for Englewood, Sheridan, Glendale, and Skyline. That's more on the Denver Fire and Denver Health Paramedic side. So any medical calls that we get from those places, we will create a call for service and ask certain medical questions and send the paramedics and the fire department to those cities or to those different areas. Even though it's not in the city and county of Denver, we just have a contractual agreement with them that we run all of their fire and medical calls. And then over there on the right hand side, I can't see it because there we go. Mutual radio talk groups, how we communicate with other agencies if we have some sort of dynamic event. So we can talk to DIA, which is the airport. We can talk to Aurora, and pretty much any of the Denver Metro police agencies. So whether it be Westminster, Thornton, CSP, that sort of stuff. And we're just easily able to talk to them through our radio consoles, which is pretty cool. And then again, I won't get into too many details, but this is a way, like I was mentioning earlier, how we can, through the brilliant technology of cell phones, we're able to have a better understanding of where you are if you're not able to tell us where you are. So we used to have a block range in which we pretty much knew where you were unless you were moving. Now we have an area of certainty. If you look on the right-hand side, there's a small green circle. And based upon that small green circle, we can tell, unless you're moving again, that you're within that green circle if you can't tell us the address. So we're able to communicate that information to officers on the street or the paramedics or the fire department to be able to find you better. And that blue circle is pretty much the area of certainty where the cell phone tower is telling us where you are. But now, again, with the cool technology of cell phones ever evolving and getting better, we can tell that you're within that green circle. Typical questions that we're going to ask whenever you call 911. What is the address of your emergency? That's the most important and the very first question that we ask. Obviously, we can't send help to an address that we don't have or that you don't know. Now, granted, with that last part that you don't know where you are, that's a caveat of what I just showed you earlier, that we can actually have a pretty good understanding of where you are. But that's the most important. You can tell us everything that's going on in your incident, but without an address, it's very difficult for us to send help to you, and it slows down the response. So if you can always know where you are, or at least give us some intersections, or know that you're 2 houses south of, or 3 houses south of Iliff and Adams, so to speak. that would be tremendously helpful. Or if you're on the highway, knowing what exit you're by, telling us that there are certain landmarks near you can definitely help, because our ECTs, our technicians and our dispatchers are highly trained, and they're geographical experts within the city, which is pretty cool. So when did this incident occur? We want to know if it happened 2 minutes ago or 2 days ago. That makes a difference in terms of the police response. We'll always ask, are there any weapons involved in this situation, just for officer safety and also for paramedic and Denver firefighters safety as well too, because they don't have a way to protect themselves like the police officers do. So want to make sure that we're keeping all of our responders safe out there. Has anyone been drinking or using drugs? Obviously, that's important due to someone being under the influence and not being able to make the best decisions for them within this incident. And obviously, it's responder safety as well for all those folks out there too. Is anybody injured? If anybody's injured in a fender bender accident, if you say it's a fender bender, it just seems like you just kind of bumped somebody. We're going to treat that as an accident with no injury, and then we're going to ask if you are injured, so we can bump that up from an accident no injury to maybe an accident with injury, and then you'll get the firefighters and the paramedics to respond as well, in addition to the police officers. And then we'll be asking suspect information. We ask a lot of questions. We can ask them quickly as long as you're able to answer them quickly. We need to know what the suspects look like in any situation. What's the phone number you're calling from, so we can call you back, whether you're a victim or a witness or need any sort of follow-up to the incident that you called us for. And then do you want any contact from officers? People, this is always a big question within these My City Academies, do you have to talk to officers? No, absolutely not. You don't have to. If you wish to, great. Or if you witness something that is important, the officers would like to follow up with you, but you absolutely do not have to talk to officers, whether it be in person or over the phone. If you only want them to make a phone call to you for a follow-up, no problem. I understand that having police officers show up at your house whenever you're calling for your neighbors can be obviously an issue going forward in the future. So totally understand if you don't want contact from officers. And then there's some frequently asked questions for 911 services. How long is it going to take for officers to respond? We don't know. It just depends on the day, the time of day. You saw earlier, 5 p.m. in the afternoon, it may take us or may take them longer to respond to your incident than it would be if it was 4 o'clock in the morning. Obviously less going on within the city, but we never give out any sort of estimated times of arrival because you just don't know how long it's going to take for an officer to get there. 911 calls are prioritized based upon life and property. So if there's an imminent risk of life and property, obviously we're going to get those officers quicker to those calls. But if your bike was stolen 2 weeks ago, it might take officer a little bit longer to get there, just due to it being a property steal from obviously 2 weeks ago. So. And then what happens if I accidentally call 911? It's okay, just stay on the phone. If you give your phone, I have a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old at home, and sometimes they play with our phone, and I don't think that they've called 911 yet, because I make sure that I watch them closely. But if you do, or if your children do, just make sure you just stay on the phone with them, and we'll answer, and you can just tell us that everything's okay, because we'll call you back, bug you, and make sure that everything's okay, because sometimes it happens when people will call 911 and they're in some sort of incident where they can't communicate to us because, Lord forbid, they're being assaulted, or they have fallen, they can't get up. So we understand, we get it. Questions at the end. If you're going to call 911, obviously you can dial us or text us. We prefer you call us at 911. It's faster. And we can get information to officers or the paramedics or the firefighters more quickly. And then there's our non-emergency number, 913-2000. So for any of those cold incidents that happened 2 weeks ago, you can call a non-emergency. I'm not going to sit there and tell you what your definition of an emergency should be, or what ours is, or what mine is, or Maria's, or Captain Pixley's. Everybody has a different understanding of what an emergency is. So if you think it's an imminent threat to life or property, please call 911. But if it's not, use that non-emergency number so we can prioritize those 911 calls. And then over there on the right-hand side are deaf and hearing impaired phone numbers. If you can't communicate for whatever reason on the phone, we have those phone numbers that sit throughout the center, and we're able to respond to those. Those are not a replacement for 911. You can actually physically text 911, but those phone numbers you can either call or text us, and we will get back to those as soon as we can.
So next we have, and we will be answering questions towards the end for all the panelists. For the moment though, we want to welcome Captain Greg Pixley with Denver Fire.
Hello, everybody. Well, I'm here to talk to you about the Denver Fire Department. And depending upon what your needs might be in an emergency situation, oftentimes you're going to find a firefighter that will respond to the 911 call, just as Tyler mentioned. So we really love the community, first and foremost. But unfortunately, we have to deal with them when they're in their most dire situation, perhaps a fire, car accident, if somebody's sick. We will respond, or we will help out anybody at any time. Now, the Denver Fire Department has a mission statement, and it basically boils down to three different things. First is the desire to serve. Second is the courage to act. And third is the ability to perform. And what that does for us in terms of firefighters for Denver is that we will basically do whatever is necessary to help those who are in need. That's what that mission statement is. We have put out fires. We have helped people when they're sick. I have, in fact, even rescued a cat from a tree. Now, you might think that some of the reasons why the fire department comes to your house is only for emergencies, but that's not, in fact, the truth. We will help people in any circumstance by changing a car tire, helping somebody if their water is leaking, if they think that their smoke detector isn't working. Our goal is to help anybody at any time, regardless of the circumstances. So people that have never called 911 before might not have an understanding of what our capabilities and what our role might be as a fire department. And 911 might not fit the role that you, or might not fit your need. So oftentimes, as you are becoming accustomed to the services from the city, we ask people to call 311. Because if they know it's not an emergency, maybe they have a water leak in their house, maybe if there is a specific issue that is not fire or emergency related, 311 can help make a determination of where and who can help that individual at that time. So I always recommend 311 if you don't know if it's an emergency, if you don't think it's an emergency, and if you don't have a worry of getting hurt. Now, any other time, call 911 at the first sign of an emergency. Now, I talked to you about the mission statement and about what we do as a fire department. Our goal, again, is to do whatever we need to do. We have 1,060 sworn firefighters on the Denver Fire Department. We have another 100 civilian employees that are our friends. So essentially, we have 1,050 people that are there able to help you at any time, all with the same focus in mind of doing what we need to help make somebody's situation better. In the Denver Fire Department, not only do we have 1,060 firefighters, we also have 39 firehouses that are distributed throughout the Denver metro area, or excuse me, through the Denver city and county area, in addition to 4 other areas: the Skyline area, Inglewood, Glendale, and Sheridan. So we provide fire protection to the city and county of Denver and to those 4 cities. Our goal, again, is to help anybody, and it doesn't matter if they're city and county residents or if they work there. It's anybody that might need assistance. Within our fire department, we have 6 divisions. And those divisions, which we call divisions, break down our capabilities as firefighters and what our role might be. Now, everybody calls a firefighter because they fight fire. And I know that might sound redundant, but our goal is to let people know that it's not just an emergency situation. And if I could have you come away with anything after my presentation, I would hope that you would remember that. So, of course, we have firefighters, and every day we have 200 firefighters that are housed in those 39 fire stations that include the Denver International Airport, and those firefighters will do whatever is necessary. I've said that a couple times. So we have 600 people, 200 on any given day, that are operating in our operations division. We also have about 150 firefighters that are in our fire prevention division. Now, fire prevention is a group that ensures that there's not gasoline next to a hot water heater, or that a door isn't blocked at a grocery store. So if there was a fire, people would have the capability of being able to get out without being trapped inside. Fire prevention has a very broad range of area that we operate in, but it could be something as simple as a smoke detector or a fire alarm system or a sprinkler system, which you may see inside of a building that is designed to put fires out without anybody there. Now, that fire prevention division is something that is very behind the scenes. You don't see a lot of fire prevention firefighters out there, but they are working with new construction and old construction. They're working in hazardous materials environment. And in fact, even in the marijuana industry, where we have been innovative and created some of the national standards for being able to safely use or to develop and manufacture marijuana without putting the people at risk that might be working in that environment. So fire prevention is a huge piece. We also have a training division, and that training division is exactly as it sounds. We use our training division not only to bring new firefighters into our world, but also to help train the older firefighters so that they have the capability to maintain their skills and their standards. Training division is a very important piece, because every day Denver firefighters are training on the most benign and most complex emergencies so that we have the capability to help an individual at any given time. We also have an administration division. And if you could understand, you have 1,150 employees total, you have to be able to manage the paperwork, the payment schedules, any number of administrative pieces that are necessary to have a large organization like that. And that is where our administrative division finds their role. The next is our technical services division. In every fire engine and fire truck, and in a large part of the department, we have computers, just like everybody else. But those computers are very important because they have to have an interconnection to the 911 system so that we have an awareness of exactly where to go once an individual who's in crisis calls, so then we can get there as quick as possible. In the Denver Fire Department, the Denver City and County, Inglewood, Sheridan, and Glendale, and Skyline are very lucky because our firefighters can get from any location in the city to that emergency in 4 minutes. 4 minutes is a national standard that we are very proud of being able to meet. And it's through those technological advances that allow for us to be able to get to that emergency as soon as possible. The Tech Services Division also works on our fire engines and our fire trucks. And we need to make sure that those have the capability to get all of those equipment, all of that, all those personnel to that situation or to the emergency that we are designated to go. And then finally, we have firefighters out at Denver International Airport. We have 100 firefighters that are assigned out there. And we work with the FAA, or the Federal Aviation Administration, and we meet their obligations and their standards with specialized equipment, not like what you would see in the city, to help ensure that those that are traveling through Denver International have the ability to be safe when they're at the airport and when they're flying in and when they're flying out. So those 6 divisions are where our 1,150 employees come from. We handle about 130,000 calls that are generated through the 911 system. Now, proportionally, or if you look at the number of fires that 130,000 calls creates, we only have about 4% of those calls that are fires. And that might sound small, but if you think about it, that's 4,000 fires. Actually, it's more than 4,000 fires that occur through the city and county. And we have the capability to extinguish those fires before they become very large. On any typical day, we are fighting 2 or 3 fires a day. But again, that's about 4,500 fires a year. Every one of our firefighters are emergency medical technicians, and that means that when we get on scene, we can perform basic life support to ensure that that individual has a greater capability of being helped, so that that emergency doesn't get worse. We work with our colleagues at the Denver Health and Hospitals Division of the city that provide advanced life support, but you're going to find a firefighter on scene of an emergency usually first. And then finally, our firefighters assist in any number of situations, not just in the city and county. We're all familiar that there is the wildfire situation going on here in the state of Colorado and in the western part of the United States. The Denver Fire Department maintains one of the largest wildland firefighting teams in the state of Colorado, if not the region, with 150 firefighters that are capable of responding throughout the United States whenever there is a need. And then, of course, as you see the hurricane coming in the Gulf Coast right now, we have firefighters that are specially trained to help and will respond to any part of the United States to assist with natural disasters and with terrorist attacks like 9/11. So I think that's about 10 minutes that I've spoken to you all. Do you have any questions for me? I see the one comment there where we will assist people that lock their keys in their car. We will do anything. We really are. We're jacks of all trade, and we can figure just about anything out. But again, if you don't think it's an emergency, call 311 and go through their questioning to help you determine what and who would be the best to help you in that circumstance. However, if you have any emergency at any time, if someone's sick, if it's smoke, a possible car accident, or fire, call 911 immediately. The sooner you call 911, the sooner the fire department, our colleagues in the police department, and the paramedics from Denver Health and Hospitals will be there to help you. So thank you all very much. And you know what? I don't think I told you, my name is Greg Pixley, and I work for the Denver Fire Department. I don't think I gave you that information. And I want 2021 to be better than 2020. That's all I can ask. If it's COVID, let's get rid of COVID. I saw somebody talking about going to concerts, outdoor concerts. I love outdoor concerts. And I would love to get back to that point too. So let's just make it better than it was today. Let tomorrow be better, and then better the next day. So that's what I would say. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Captain Pixley. And we will be, if any questions come up, we will be talking to him towards the end. But let's actually bring on Officer Dominguez.
I am Technician Jeanette Dominguez with the Denver Police Department, currently assigned to Community Relations. Previously, I was a Community Resource Officer, which I will talk to you more about on the next slide. The City and County of Denver, the Police Department consists of 6 police districts. I believe Tyler shared that map on his presentation. Thank you. So we are comprised of 6 police districts. And if you would like to know at the end of this presentation where your address falls and which district your address falls, then go ahead and send me a message or an email, and I can let you know which district you are in. Each district has several community resource officers who function as liaisons between their community residents and the police department. And a little bit more about what they do is community resource officers deal more with neighborhood issues, community issues, rather than calls for service. So that includes speeding complaints, neighborhood issues like graffiti or possible drug-related issues in your community. However, they also hold many events throughout the district, which, like, for example, our community commanders meeting. That's a meeting where the commander will talk about crime statistics and current crime trends and possible solutions that they've been coming up with. If you want to know or want to ask the commander directly, a question about the neighborhood, then that is your opportunity to do so, and then, have that informal conversation with that commander. Also, community resource officers deal a lot with like back to school programs where we give out school supplies to our communities, or Christmas presents to our communities. So it's really good to know who your community resource officer is for your district. Again, I will let you know all of that information. If you'd like to know more, just send me an email or a quick message and I will get you connected to your community resource officer. There are many reasons why you would have an encounter with a police officer, and the following are just a couple tips of how to have a safe and effective encounter. If you are pulled over while driving a vehicle, first of all, you need to have 3 things while operating a vehicle. Your driver's license, a valid driver's license, insurance. The vehicle must be insured and registered. Okay, those are important to know when operating a vehicle here in our in the state. If you are being pulled over, it's okay, breathe. Everyone gets nervous. I still get nervous. It's important to know that you can take a second, breathe, pull over to the right as soon as it is safe to do so. And you can indicate that by using your signal light or your hazard lights, just so that the officer is aware that you're aware you're being pulled over and that you're trying to get over to the right-hand lane. Roll down your windows. If you have dark tinted windows, I always appreciate it if, when people roll down all of their windows. You don't have to, but it puts the officers at ease. It'll put you at ease. Roll down the windows, stay in the vehicle, leave your hands on the steering wheel. Don't reach for any of your documents until asked to do so. And when you are, again, when the officer does approach you, you'll know who he or she is and the reason why you are being pulled over. And if they don't give that to you, they don't give that reason, you are free to ask. Ask as many questions as, make you feel comfortable. Okay, but you do need to provide the officer with your driver's license, insurance, and registration when asked. Again, don't reach for items until the officer is asked for those items. And don't leave the traffic stop until the officer instructs you or lets you know, okay, we're done here. If the officer asks you to step out of the vehicle, that might be because there's a lot of movement, or it just, makes the officer feel a little bit more at ease, just bringing you out. It doesn't mean, this, that, or the other. It's just something the officer might ask you to do. While outside of the vehicle, keep your arms and your hands visible. Try not to put them in your pocket. Again, people get nervous and tend to put their hands in their pockets. Try not to do that. And then answer the questions truthfully when asked, and remain where you are until the officer completes the questions. You will be free to go unless the officer has a reason to detain you. try to always carry identification with you. Whatever that is, try to always have identification with you so that that can avoid a case of mistaken identity. And then this one's important. We don't have too many cases of this, but if you are concerned that you are encountering a police impersonator, call 911 immediately to report it. Okay, if you don't feel comfortable getting out of the vehicle, you can always call 911 to make sure that that is a real police officer who you are speaking to. Also, if you are not cited, if you do not receive a traffic citation or are detained and arrested, the officer should give you his or her business card. And that way you know who you spoke to. If you feel that you might have been treated unfairly, or you have questions, you don't quite understand what just happened, there is a number on the back of every business card that you can call and ask those questions, and either, you know, file a formal complaint, or you might even want to let someone know that the officer did a really good job. We always appreciate that also. When to call the police, and Tyler kind of touched on this already. There are two numbers, as Tyler had mentioned: the non-emergency number, which is the 720-913-2000, and the 911. If you don't know which number you should call, just call 911, and they will either, they'll triage it, I guess, is a good way to put it. So simple guidelines on when to call the police. When someone's safety is at risk, or there's a threat or actual crime occurring, 911. 911 always, okay? If you need help right now, or a crime is occurring right now, 911 is the number to call. Someone is forcing entrance into a home, loading items into a car from an unoccupied business or home, checking doors or windows. And that's a good one. When you call 911, you want to let them know what is suspicious to you, what is going on that prompted you to call 911. You know, someone is walking in my neighborhood and he looks suspicious. Well, we need you to give us a little bit more, okay? Because someone just looks suspicious, we're gonna need a little bit more than that. What is that person doing that is suspicious to you? Are they checking car doors to see if they're unlocked? Are they peering into windows? Are they checking, doors to homes? What is it that they're doing that looks suspicious, that looks out of the ordinary to you? Unusual noises such as dogs continually barking, gunshots breaking glass, screaming, alarms going off. That's what you'll want to let the call takers know as well. As many details as you can provide, the better information that the police have when they get there or on the way over. Abandoned vehicles, that's something that your community resource officer can also help you with. Or suspicious vehicles, driving around slowly, lights off. That's something that you would want to call in as well. And we get that sometimes you get nervous and you don't want to let your neighbors or anyone else know that you called, and you kind of just want to stay out of it. It is important to know that you can always remain anonymous. If you call and you just don't want that issue with your neighbor or your neighbors or anyone else, you can always call and say, hey, this is what's going on. It would make me feel comfortable if someone would check on it. However, I would like to remain anonymous. I don't want to let them know that they called because I want to avoid problems. I'm not sure that that's something that a lot of people know, but that is an option, is to remain anonymous. If you don't want the police coming to your door and asking you further questions, you can always say, I would rather the police contact me on the phone. If anyone has any questions and would like to know further information, you can always contact me at any time. I'll give Maria or she does have my email. You can email me at any time.
I don't know if you saw the question, but somebody asked about helping people that are having mental issues. Can you just explain a little bit about how your patrolmen and women are working with clinical psychologists to help with those situations?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So thank you for that question. Yeah, so we do have clinicians, medical clinicians that do ride with us. There's one on each shift. We have 3 shifts. If it is determined either by the officers or dispatch that someone is having some kind of mental emergency, the clinicians will come out with us and they'll assess the situation. You know, whether that is, did you run out of your medication? Do you need medication? Do you need to go to the hospital right now to be evaluated? What other resources can we provide you with in order to stable that that situation or that patient? Or, you know, is it someone that's not being taken care of properly? Is it a caretaker's not there? A kid is having some, you know, a mental emergency at school, or you know, suicidal ideations, homicidal ideations. Our clinicians are amazing. They're compassionate. They're amazing. And they are really there to help us and guide the officers on those kind of calls.
Thank you so much, Officer. So another one of the questions that we have is probably for all of our public safety representatives today is about some states have an agreement to aid ICE, the immigrant and customs enforcement, or immigration and customs enforcement, with detention of undocumented immigrants and collaterals. Does Denver Police Department have the same agreement? And I just shared the link to Executive Order 142, which is the safety, basically the safety ordinance for immigrants and refugees, just to let them know that Colorado actually has the opposite, or Denver, I should say. Denver has the opposite agreement. We will not work with ICE. And our ordinance through Executive Order 142, signed by Mayor Michael Hancock, states that any city official is not actually allowed to work with ICE unless ICE produces a judge, a warrant signed by a judge. So if they produce a document that says you need to do this for us, but it's not signed by a judge, then we don't have to work with them. And we work very closely with the city attorney's office to ensure the safety of all our residents in those types of cases. So I've included the link for Executive Order 142 in the chat. Please take a look at it and get familiar with it. It's actually quite a really good program or ordinance that we developed. Within the ordinance, it was also established a legal services fund to help those who are going through deportation proceedings, because everybody, the city of Denver just believes that everybody who's going through or having some kind of court appearance or dealing with the law should have good representation, because it's a complex issue and we just should. So please take a look at that. Anybody else want to say that? How about, I know because of Executive Order 142, our emergency services have access to language lines.
For the purposes of reporting crime, say you're nervous about calling in or filing a report because of the language barrier, we do use the language line, and we will find an interpreter that speaks your language so that you can get the help that you need. Likewise on traffic stops, we will find you an officer. If you don't understand what we are trying to do or conduct the way we are conducting the traffic stop, you can ask for an officer that speaks your language. If we don't have an officer, we will utilize the language line. So don't let language deter you from filing a report, filing a complaint, anything that has to do with the police department or fire department or any of our safety departments. Don't let that deter you from calling in and being heard. We do have that language line at our disposal.
What if they can't, what do they do when they can't? Sorry, Tyler, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, I was just going to piggyback. I think you're probably thinking the same thing I am, is that whenever they call whenever anybody's primary language is not English and it's something else, whenever you call 911, just say what language you need. And just like Jeanette spoke on, we have almost every language that you could even think of at our disposal through the language line interpreter service. So if you're able to give us your address and say what, in just a few words, what your emergency is, I need an ambulance or I need the police, whatever, we can get help started that way, and then we can bring the interpreter on with us and then obtain more information as the responders are going to your address.
Great, thank you. And so what happens if, for example, they don't recognize the language that's being asked for? What do you do, and what's the process for that?
Yeah, I mean, that gets a little bit tricky, especially if it's one of those limited resource languages in the middle of the night. It does take time. It's not something that we have access to quickly, whether it be a different dialect or language that's not spoken commonly. In Denver, we have a list of the top 10 most commonly spoke languages within the Denver metro area, well, within Denver. But Spanish is one. I believe maybe Russian is two. Remember the order, but we have pretty much a speed dial whenever we contact the language line that can get us to those specific top 10 languages. But if it's not one within the top 10, we can get their customer service on the line quickly and get that limited resource language. But that's our process right now. Like I said, it would be best practice if you could at least say your address and say what, in just a few words, what your emergency is or what service you need, and we can get them there. And as we're gathering more information from you while you're on the phone with us, simultaneously the paramedics, the police department, or the fire department are driving to you. A lot of people don't understand that, don't know that, and that's probably something I should have mentioned earlier, that it's real time. We ask the questions, we document it in our CAD system, in our dispatch system, and then, within just a few seconds, the dispatcher is able to communicate that to the field operations in all three of our agencies. So
great. Thank you so much for that response. And I do want to keep track of time. It is actually 1:03 right now, and we're towards the end. We do have 3 questions in the Q&A that I think are really important. So if our presenters can kind of hang out for maybe 5 minutes just to answer those questions, do you have time to do that? And then any of our participants can, that have to go off, can go off. I just want to remind you before you leave that next Monday, we've actually kind of redone our schedule. Instead of talking about families and kids next week, we are actually on Monday having a legal services and legal issues concerning immigrants conversation with the director of our office, the team OT, where she will be discussing Executive Order 142 and the precautions the city has taken to protect all our citizens and our residents in Denver. And then we're going to be talking about public charge and other issues that have come up during this series because you've asked me about them. And this was one of the presentations that we could switch around. So please join us on Monday for that. Additionally, we'll have the parking lot session on Thursday. So if you have additional questions, we can review those at that time. If anything comes up, just let me know. And then, of course, don't forget to complete the census. Another reminder, we're nagging you about that. We're at 69 or 68%. We were at 69 10 years ago. And we really hoped, except for COVID, that we would surpass that number, and we haven't. So please, please, please do what you can to make sure that people complete the census, and we can ensure funding for our critical services like 911, Denver Fire, and Denver Police. But for those who want to stick around, and if you all can stay and answer these questions, that would be great. One of the questions is about training. Officer Dominguez, what can you tell us about the training that officers receive? And then do they receive any sort of cultural and or lifestyle training? They're specifically wondering about LGBTQ community.
Right, we do. We receive, so our academy is 27 weeks long. Once you're accepted into our academy, we do receive training on all aspects of life, and which includes our cultural training. And then once you graduate the academy, you are required by post to continue your education and your training and have to receive 24 hours of continued training each year. multifaceted. Also, so we actually have Lieutenant Wyatt, who is our LGBTQ liaison for the department. And so I know he puts on a lot of that training and events in order to connect more, in depth with each of our communities. But for any specific questions on, to go more in specific, I can get you connected with Lieutenant Wyatt. He would be much more knowledgeable on specific question and answers if you would like.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that contact. And then the other question, well, Captain Pixley, can you tell us too what kind of training firefighters receive in the area of maybe cultural competency?
Very similar to what Officer Dominguez had mentioned. We go through cultural sensitivity training as well. And our goal, again, is to find whatever connection we can with the individual that might be in need. Truthfully, we don't care. That's the cool part about it. We don't look at anybody except for that they need help. And we're going to do our best to find whatever is necessary for them to get the help that they need. So when I say we don't care, we really do care, but that's not an important piece for us, where we do want to have an understanding culturally of what a person's situation is. Our main goal is to figure out what their immediate crisis is. And that's what we're focused on. But we do have sensitivity training, cultural sensitivity training. We do have an awareness of the environments that we work, and we are certainly compassionate to everybody's needs. But our main goal, anytime that we go into somebody's house, is how can we help you? That's what we want to do. We just want to be there for them when they need us the most.
Great, thank you so much. So, and then another one of the questions, and hopefully that answered your question, Brandon. But another one of the questions that we have is, if somebody has a loved one with a disability that may cause them to leave the house and get lost in the city, act differently, and have police called on them, what can relatives do to assure that person's safety? And what can be done to avoid cases similar to like what happened in New York? And I didn't read about this, but what happened in New York with Mr. Brude?
Good question. Again, that's a response for the community resource officers. As a CRO, we're going to call them CROs. We would go meet with the families, take our clinicians, and ensure that they have, I know, and I'm sorry that I don't know the proper name for it, but it was like a wristwatch that some of our children that we had wore on their wrist in case they were to wander away or walk away, and it has like a little GPS tracking system. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know the correct name for it. Anyway, so that's where our community resource officers and our clinicians would meet with the families, in case of an emergency, and get a current up-to-date picture, description, height, weight, everything, that loved one, to describe that loved one. And then we would get phone numbers for family members in case this happens. And that way our districts are, would be aware of the situation. We are trained in those areas as well, okay, to recognize those behaviors, so that we don't think, it's might be someone trying to break into a house and commit a burglary. No, well, this might be a person that, who lives there but got locked out, or whatever the situation may be. Again, if you would like to meet with the community resource officers and the clinicians, to have a plan in place in the event that happens. And in the event that, they do wander off or get lost, we will put out a bolo, a be on the lookout, and we will try to find that person with, we'll check the buses, we'll check where they like to go. If they like to go to a certain convenience store, we'll call relatives. So it's definitely something that we can carry on this conversation on later if you'd like.
Great, thank you so much. And we can definitely continue these discussions and maybe open up another session later on where we can have maybe an open forum for these types of issues. Francina, who asked that question, is within Grupo Vida, and it's a group of support. It's a support group of parents, and they also do advocacy and education, but it's for parents and families who have children with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it started. And so now a lot of the children that they worked with are now adults. So I know they have a lot of these same concerns. What if a person detained by police fears for their life? What can they do?
Absolutely. And then
we've been seeing a lot of these situations, so please.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very realistic thing that we're living, especially in most recent times. You are allowed to record. However, if a police officer tells you to put the phone down so that they can continue with the detainment, you need to put it down. We do have body cameras. Every single one of our officers in Denver has body cameras that record what is going on. And I think it just depends on the situation. There's not one answer that I can give you. Unfortunately, it just depends on the answer. It just depends on the situation. Again, if you feel like you were treated unfairly or it was unnecessary, force that they used, you always have the right to speak to a sergeant or to make formal complaints through the chain of command. And we also have mediation services between our residents and the officers. If you feel like the officer did something inappropriate, conducted themselves in an inappropriate manner, you do have the opportunity to bring that up and to face the officer if you would like with a third-party mediator and say, hey, you did this, I didn't like this, why did you do, and then have that conversation with that officer and a third-party mediator.
Yeah. And
I'm not sure if I answered that to the fullest extent, but it truly depends. Again, don't ever feel like you need to be quiet or silenced about your interaction with an officer. We are held to a higher standard. And if an officer conducted themselves in a manner which was inappropriate, then that officer needs to be, I don't want to say called out, that officer needs to answer answer for his or her conduct.
Yeah. All right. And then, so even before, like those are great examples of what to do if a situation like that happens. But even before something like that happens, I think some of your tips that you gave about being stopped in a car, putting the windows down if you have tinted windows, those types of things. Is there anything that comes to mind that they could say to the officer before something like that gets out of hand?
Right. So aside from, keeping your hands on the steering wheel, roll down your window, let the officer know, hey, I'm nervous, I'm scared. We understand. Like I said, everyone gets nervous when being pulled over by the police. We understand that. You start sweating, you start shaking, you get nervous. We understand that. Let the officer know, hey, give me a second. I need to breathe. I'm nervous. And if it's not an emergency situation, because it has happened. It has happened where your vehicle matches the description of a suspect of a crime in progress. What you are wearing matches the description of a suspect that just committed a crime. And so those are two different situations out of many situations that can happen. And it can either be a simple traffic stop to where, hey, you didn't stop, or you ran the stoplight, or whatever it is, to let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. Don't move. Get on the ground. And again, it just depends. Every situation is so complex, and it depends. Like I said, you might fit the description of this and this, and your vehicle might. So just comply. And I know that's hard. It's easier said than done, but if they ask you, don't put your hands in your pockets, keep your hands up, don't move, just comply. And if you are not that suspect, you will be released. And then ask for an explanation. Why did you stop me? And if time permits and the situation permits, the officer should explain. If not, again, ask for their business card. There's a number on the back. call that number and say, what the heck just happened? Why was I pulled over? It can be that the officer just does not, they're looking for a suspect, and if you're not their suspect, they're gonna release you and keep searching for that suspect. They don't have time to explain right there and then, but there is always that number, and you can always reach someone that will explain to you what just happened.
Thank you all for sticking with us and being able to spend this additional time with us. This is an important topic, and knowing how we can all work together to protect our public safety is important. So I appreciate you all sharing your time with us.